Racism is expensive as a motherfucker, ain't it? Y'all ain't get y'all doors checked. Y'all ain't get no stimulus check. Groceries high as giraffe cat. Gas about to be right along with it. Let's not even bring up the price of motherfucking eggs, which was y'all reason to put a mask over your racism. We on the midst of World War III, you feel me? Y'all president can't even stop posting on his social media, so they had to create a diversion because they didn't know if he was gonna leak what the fuck was about to happen on his social media accounts. I would never forgive y'all, but I'm one of the few people that believe this shit had to happen. I ain't gonna hold you, because all of this shit needed to be uncovered. And if Kamala would have really been certified, I still think everything was tampered with, by the way. But anyway, all of this had to happen to show how idiotic y'all are and how racist y'all are. Then on top of that, people thought that we was immigrants. People thought that we was gonna be the ones that's deported. Baby, we've been here. I will never forgive y'all for this bullshit that we in. I will never forgive y'all for this bullshit that we in. Because this is utterly ridiculous. All of this for racism. It's expensive like a motherfucker, ain't it? Confirmation. Expensive as a motherfucker. So guess what? I'm about to be outside this summer. Because I don't know if it's going to be the last motherfucking summer we could go outside. You hear me? Period.
So racism has always been expensive. It's always been expensive. It's just, they always thought that they would have the fee. They always thought they would have the fee, and hell, for a good minute they did. They had the fee to give. See, the problem is now they don't have the fee. They don't have the fee, so it's becoming a problem. And rather than stop trying to pay the fucking fee, y'all will literally kill yourselves and kill the reputation of this country, of this nation, trying to pay a fee that y'all should have been stopped paying. Okay? Y'all should have been stopped paying. When colleges went from being tuition free to tuition based in the 1960s, that was all because y'all couldn't stop us from getting educated anymore, so you wanted to put a roadblock in there. You wanted to make it harder for us. We didn't have the capital like you guys did, so you added tuition.
If people would have just accepted that racism is more expensive than their eggs were before they voted for the worst possible option that we've ever seen within our lifetimes, we would not be facing not annihilation potentially, with governments going through the potential for nuclear war, internal conflict at its highest heights, and people still are losing jobs and have no money for groceries. And particularly, Iran is going to be cutting off gas to the point that it may be $8 a gallon. And all of this is for racism. Because the people who actually are going to be running your lives are the tech bros. Your man ain't going to be in there much longer, because that's why Vance is behind him. And it made no sense. He is connected to the tech billionaires, but racism is expensive, but stupidity is even more expensive. Who said that?
Racism is expensive. And we are witnessing just how pricey it can be. And not only is racism expensive, but racists are really gullible and stupid, because y'all let that caucoid campaign and tell y'all every single time he stood behind a podium that he was not going to send the United States to war, that he was going to lower eggs, that he was going to lower gas. Like, y'all really believed in your heart of hearts that he was going to deliver and follow through on all of the things he said, and he lied to y'all. And now the United States is in a war that we should not be in. Okay? I couldn't even talk about it yesterday because I was doing stuff with my family, and I was just like trying to keep my mind off of the fact that I have active duty military members in my family and in my life. So I was just trying to distract myself from the reality of the situation, because I know that I'm not going to be able to do that, because obviously I have to be locked in. I have to be tuned in, so I know what's going on. So I know how, to move with me and my own family, right? But the United States have now entered a war that we should not be in. And as a result, Iranian leaders are meeting with their parliament, or have met with their parliament, which you should be doing, by the way, because I'm still trying to figure out how someone strikes without congressional approval. It sounds very much dictatorship to me, like a dictatorship to me. And if it walks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. And Congress has allowed for him to get away with these little things, which has led to where we are right now. Because in the history of the United States, in the history of presidency, no one has ever pulled a trigger without congressional approval. And so Iranian leaders, they met, and now they're like, oh, well, we'll just close the Strait of Hormuz. So now they're going to disrupt the global oil supply chain, which could then get other countries involved really quickly. I don't know, y'all. Every single day it's been some type of tragedy, and it's only June. It's only June. And it's been something every day with this incompetent MAGA maniac. And what are we talking about? Making America what again? It's never been great. And it's not going to be great. This is not how you make a country great. And I don't know. I know I couldn't serve in the military. I mean, I already knew that. I never could serve a country that doesn't serve me. I'm not one of those people that I'm going to do anything for a bag. So I never could do that. I know everybody has their own reasons, and we could talk about those later. But I know I could not be in the military because I know me. And if my oath is to protect the Constitution, and if in my oath I say I am vowing to, like, I'm swearing to protect the Constitution from all terrorists, domestic and foreign, I would have to get rid of the domestic terrorists, because that's what I was sworn in to do. Yeah, because that's what he is. But racism is expensive. That's what got us here. Because we didn't have to be here. Y'all should do better. Fuck y'all. Good day, beloved.
So one of the most unspoken aspects of racism, discrimination, slavery, and all of the shit that black people had to go through in this country is the sheer amount of wealth that black people were prohibited from having due to that racism, discrimination, prejudice, and slavery. So I was just chilling, kind of bored, watching YouTube with nothing much to do because I've done all my work for the day. And so I started tinkering with numbers and facts and data and ChatGPT. So here's what ChatGPT and I have come up with as it relates to what is owed to black people in this country. And trust me, these are just very conservative estimates based on what we do know. Because what we don't know, I'm sure you can triple it. Probably even 10 times what we have here. Okay, as most of you know, enslaved people were property themselves. And they were producing other commodities, but the most expensive commodity during the institution of slavery in America were the enslaved people themselves. At the end of the Civil War, the eve of the Civil War, 1860, there are 4 million enslaved people documented here. Their collective market value for what they were worth at the time was $3 billion to $4 billion in 1860. As you can see. If we do inflation today, 2025, that is between 90 and 120 trillion dollars in today's currency. Enslaved people were the single largest financial asset in the United States, worth more than all the nation's banks, railroads, and factories combined. We were that black gold to the United States. We were the commodity that made the United States the United States. So obviously, agriculture, specifically cotton alone by itself, accounted for over 50% of the United States exports by 1860. You know, and enslaved labor also worked in many other industries like the railroad, like in factories. A lot of times they talk about the immigrants coming and working to factories, but there were also huge amounts of African American, Black American enslaved people working in those factories, on the railroads, all over the country, even on the West Coast. Other industries they were in, textiles, like I said, the factories, banking and insurance industries, shipping and trade, industrial expansion in the North, which profited from the raw materials, obviously, from the South, and cotton and other materials. A 2020 estimate by economists suggests that over 20 to 30 trillion in economic value in 2020 was produced by enslaved labor, factoring in centuries of unpaid work and a compounded growth with that. So here's the breakdown. The market value of enslaved people was some $90 to $120 trillion in today's currency. The economic value of the work that our ancestors produced is some 20 to 30 trillion, which is roughly about 100, more or less, well over $100 trillion of economic impact in the United States, just off slave labor and the slave bodies themselves. That alone right there is money that is still in circulation today in the United States in many different sectors. For example, Harvard has a huge endowment. A lot of that is slave money. Other schools have huge endowments, slave money. The federal government has a reserve. A lot of that is money from slavery. But let's continue. What about the patents, the inventions that black people made that were taken or that weren't allowed to make money off of it? Hundreds of billions of dollars to over $1 trillion in today's money is the worth of the patents and inventions that were taken from black Americans. It was actually law, U.S. patent law in 1793, that didn't allow enslaved people from holding patents. It was illegal for us to get the patent for our invention. So any invention that they created, it was actually owned, and the patent was owned by their slave owner. Benjamin Montgomery is a good example of that. He had a very important invention, and that was the steamboat propeller. Steamboat technology revolutionized things, especially along the Mississippi River and other channels and canals in this country. But because he was a slave, his slave owner got the money, got the patent for it. And his slave owner was actually, his son was a guy named Isaiah Montgomery. Isaiah Montgomery was a slave of the president, the brother of the president of the Confederacy, Jefferson Davis. And when Jefferson Davis's brother died, he actually gave Isaiah Montgomery, who's his son, land and territory. And that land and territory grew and went on to become Mound Bayou, which is one of the first all black started towns in the United States. And it's still around today in Mississippi. And it was actually one of the most feared places for a white man to be. I'll just leave that at that. But even after slavery ended, black people still weren't given full access to our patents. There was huge discrimination in the patent office. It was difficult in getting the money and the legal support to be able to get patents for our inventions. And black people created a lot of inventions. White intermediaries also many times, instead of helping them to get their patents, would just steal their patents and get the money and the acclaim for it themselves, like Edison. So if you look at the whole total of cost, the patents that were denied during slavery, that's some $200 to $400 billion. The patents that were either stolen, suppressed, or not allowed through discrimination, whatever, that's some $300 to $600 billion. So when you look industries built on unpaid black innovation, that's about $1+ trillion in cumulative amount money. And that's a conservative estimate. So the number is between 500 billion to 1.5 trillion conservatively. Even though some scholars argue that it can be significantly higher when you include compounding interest. as interest compounds. And that's just a picture of Isaiah Montgomery, founder of Mount Bayou, the steamboat in which his father created the propeller that made it run as a slave. I also thought it was important to look at land, because there have been several times black people have been promised land and land have been stolen. So that's also a number of wealth and resources that was prohibited against the black people. Y'all know about the 40 acres and a mule, the unfulfilled promise. That was like 400,000 acres that had been given out and taken back. That came out to about $1.6 to $3 billion alone. There was 12 million acres of land lost from black farmers and black people from the end of the Civil War to since 1910. That's estimated at $326 to $720 billion worth of land. When it comes to urban land and property taken in the mid 1900s, 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, that's $150 to $400 billion worth of land. So when you look at the total, conservatively, it's some $500 billion to $1.2 trillion worth of land resources taken away from black people. You let these people tell it they don't owe us not a damn thing in reparations, when you look at the numbers, the evidence shows that there was a systemic, intentional effort to suppress black wealth, to suppress our ability to accumulate, to conserve, and to send to our next generations wealth, leading us to where we are today, behind the generational wealth and wealth attainment in this country. So that is a snapshot of how racism, deeply embedded, systemic economic racism, disadvantaged the black community tremendously. We would have had accumulated tons of wealth, and all of that lost wealth didn't go anywhere. Money doesn't disappear. Money just transfers and moves into other areas and creates more wealth and compounds. The interest compounds into more wealth. So black people were shafted out of a great opportunity of wealth accumulation. Just one singular reason why reparations should happen in this country. I'm out.